Hello and welcome to Impact. I'm Jonas Cheney. Results of a recent poll finds that nearly 3/4 of Americans, 72%, believe religious messages about homosexuality create negative views of gays and lesbians. And nearly 2/3, 65%, think these anti-gay messages contribute to higher rates of suicide among LGBT youth. We'll examine these findings and introduce you to one interfaith network in Westmoreland County that invites LBGTQ persons and their families, friends, and communities to a unique and safe experience of worship. With me to discuss this, Ricardo Marsili, Renee Waun, Reverend Renee Waun. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
First of all, tell us about the Interfaith Network in Westmoreland County. What makes it so unique?
Well, the Interfaith Network in Westmoreland County is really unique because it was a collaborative and a faith-based collaborative that evolved from within the community. About 8 months ago, I had the good fortune of meeting some LGBTQ young adults whose faith life and spiritual life was very, very important. And the experiences that many of those wonderful young people had in their faith life was very troubling, where they had received messages that were very demeaning, or they were condemned as a result of who they felt they were as a person that was LGBTQ. And so in response to that, I started making phone calls to pastors, to wonderfully loving people, to dedicated counselors, social workers, and from there, this interfaith network evolved, where we decided that we would remain very committed to developing safe places and safe worship experiences for LGBTQs and their friends and families, and that we would not focus on one particular limited part of a sacred text and use that in a context that was hurtful or alienating, that we decided from a faith-based perspective that we would open our arms to LGBTQs, their friends, families, and communities, validate them as a person, embrace them as a brother and sister, and provide, again, safe places and safe worship experiences for them so that who they were as a person could be celebrated, and that families could celebrate their loved ones as well.
Renee, what does LGBTQ stand for those who might not be familiar?
It's alphabet soup. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer or questioning.
Now that Q, how long has that been on there? Because I wasn't familiar with that at all.
It's been on there for quite some time, wouldn't you say, Rick?
Yes.
Yeah. And queer or questioning is simply a category that includes people who are still wondering. You know, not everyone knows when they're born, as they grow, exactly what their sexual orientation is. And sometimes it's a discovery that you make about yourself. And so questioning is really a good term for that, because at some point in a person's life, not all heterosexuals go through this, but many people question, who am I really? And there's a moment of doubt. And then for some people it results in discovering that they are gay or lesbian person or transgender person. And so that's why the Q is on there, to allow for the fact that some people are still kind of coming out even to themselves.
We have a few minutes left in this segment. What do you think the most important thing that the Interfaith Network can do? What is its basic mission overall?
Well, some people feel very isolated in their experience, especially GLBT people who may live further out from the city, and you tend to associate the city with, lots of support groups and lots of different communities and lots of variety and difference and so on. But out in the hinterlands, let's say, it's a little harder to find those support groups and for those communities that can give you that support. And so here in Westmoreland County now, we're hoping that this will be a kind of home base for people who are further out from the city and don't really know who to contact and how to get into the city of Pittsburgh all the time.
Rick, how important is it to feel safe in a interfaith type community?
Well, it's very, very important. I think First off, to feel safe in your own community is critical, and to be able to go into a worship service or a faith-based community knowing that you're not going to be judged, that you'll be accepted for who you are as a person, validated for who you are as a person, is critical, so that people's own faith and spiritual development can occur rather than being shamed or blamed or becoming guilt-ridden. So this experience of safety in all communities is really important, and as Reverend Waun said, is critical, especially in very rural communities where LGBTQs can very easily become very isolated in nature.
You have an event coming up on the 27th. We'll talk more about that in the next segment. But for families, what do you advise to the family members who look at the situation and go, I'm really not quite comfortable with the role my daughter or son has taken, and how do you ease their fears?
Well, I think fears is the right word. I believe that whenever our children are questioning or are in a process of coming out, I think a lot happens within the family. I think parents want to help, want to be supportive, also grieve because this was an unexpected loss. My advice is don't do it alone. Let us help, and or let us direct you to even other faith-based or professional services that can really help you, that can help you continue to love your child, be a child as an adolescent or as an adult, and be a constant source of support.
We're going to take a break now. When we come back, we'll talk more about this subject. Stay with us. Interfaith Network?
I am.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Welcome back to Impact, talking about LGBTQs and the relationships they have with their families, friends, how to maintain their safety. Joining us now with Ricardo is the Reverend, or rather Joan Connolly. I'm trying to promote you a little higher than you are. Joan, I understand you have an interesting story about how you got involved with the Interfaith Network. Tell us about it.
I've been one religion all my life, and they did not want us to support our gay son. And my husband and I thought, this is somebody that we have raised, we love, and there's no way we're going to turn against him. And so they rejected my husband and I and said we couldn't be in that faith. And it destroyed me. My husband, he took it better than I did, but it destroyed me. And my son said, "Mom, don't let them do that to you. You love your faith." He said, "You are what you are." So I decided, after a minister friend of mine said, "I know where we can go." And we went to the Interfaith Network. And the love that is given at this, the guidance, pulled me through. It helped pull my husband through, because I would go home, and he's not a joiner, and I'd go home and tell him what we discussed and how they helped me. And I decided at this time in my life, it's time for me to help other people. It's time for me to join that group and say, you can't do this to parents and family and loved ones. Because that child was born to be a homosexual or a transgender, that's no reason not to love them. And we love them more and more because they are rejected. And let me tell you, my family is so supporting. Our whole loving family is supporting. So for my faith to reject me blew me away. But my Savior is LGBTQ, and I plan on giving as much of myself as I can to this organization.
So what was your reaction when you first learned that your son was gay?
I knew all along my son was gay. I knew since he was a small child, and I told my husband that. And he said, I think you're wrong. And I said, no, I know I'm right. And he was about 7 when I first said it. And he came out to the public when he was 18, and my husband said to him, your mother always knew. And I did, so I wasn't shocked. I didn't love him any less. I feel that I have to protect him, which a mother and father always feel. But my son is now older, and he is one of the most wonderful people you would ever want to meet. And I would like the world to know that. And I would like them to know that other people who are transsexual or questioning what they are, or homosexual or lesbians, are so much in need of love. And we have to give it to them.
Rick, how many support groups are there in the area for LBGTQs?
In Westmoreland County and in the more rural areas, more rural counties around Westmoreland, there are very few support groups. There certainly are, more here in Allegheny County, and PERSAD Center has really taken, a major lead in assuring that there's support groups. In Westmoreland County, we are in the early stages of developing a PFLAG support group, which is for parents and friends of lesbian and gay persons. And we're also beginning to look at extending the services of the Interfaith Network into even more rural counties as well, so that supports can be available.
Well, there certainly is nationwide. The stigma, is almost non-existent nowadays. When you look at the media, mainstream places that gays can be seen and have access to, is this area kind of behind the times in terms of getting on the forefront of thinking differently?
I'm not quite so sure about that, but what I do know is that there is still a lot of lack of understanding,
Yes.
Or fear or confusion from communities. And I think those particular things again intensify fear, as well as then create this barrier and push LGBTQ persons away. I don't know what it would be like to live in a community and be afraid to be who I was. But as I've listened to courageous stories from LGBTQs over the last 8 months, that is a lived reality.
Yes.
That persons at times are fearful of their safety, or they may go to places that were to be safe, such as faith-based communities, and they're ostracized or condemned or shamed or told they're going to go to hell. And so, yeah, we have a lot of work to do. And I think that's beautiful. I think that there is a great challenge, but I also like to think that communities and rural communities are up for it. And so part of what we also do is offer support to other faith-based communities so that we can help them understand what it means to become a welcome, open, inviting church.
Yeah, it's kind of shocking, some of the information I read at the top of the show about churches, and the perception is that a lot of suicides are caused by the messages they get from the church and the negativity of it all.
Yes, yes. And so I think churches, communities are challenged to understand more of issues regarding LGBTQs, also become welcome and inviting. And I also think families of LGBTQs need care as well. Family acceptance is also critical, and there's been some recent research that indicates that if there is family acceptance of their loved one who's LGBTQ, the degree of depression and suicidality is known to have decreased. Mm-hmm. So we would like to let the communities know that we're here, that we're here to help them and support them. And we are offering our first worship service, which is going to be on Sunday, March 27th.
We have some information we can put up on the screen, I think. There you go.
Yes.
At the Irwin United Church of Christ.
Yes.
400 Main Street in Irwin, and at 3 p.m. And also the phone number is associated with the Prasad Center?
Correct.
It's 1-888-873-7723, extension 218, if you'd like more information. Listen, I think what you're doing is a wonderful thing. It's much needed, the support group obviously, and I want to invite you back as we continue to explore this area, which remains controversial for a lot and mainstream for others, and hopefully we can bring the two together.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Jonas.
Very nice talking to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Of course, Rick will be back in the next segment as we talk about something that is prevalent on an NBC show called Parenthood, Asperger's syndrome. Stay with us.
Beautiful. Yeah. Do you still have to go to Mercer? How far is that from here?
I'll find out after I go on. Maybe an hour and a half or something like that.
Well, the person that you're going to see isn't going anywhere, so.
Yeah, remember I used to tell when I would see the lifers and they want Valium, I would not give it to them, just say, I don't have the time for you.
Yes, you do.
You walk out, I don't know where are they going.
What the hell is wrong with you? Why would you do
I know
this?
you're worried about losing your babysitter.
She's not a babysitter. She's a behavioral aid for your nephew. He's got Asperger's.
I have Asperger's? Well, what's Asperger's?
Max, Asperger's is a form of autism.
What's autism?
Some people have disabilities, Max, and
It's not really
Asperger's
a
is a form. It's not a
disability, honey.
disability, it's a syndrome.
It's a syndrome. Your brain It just works a little bit differently than other people's.
No, yeah, right.
It just, it processes things.
You're just wired differently than
I don't
everyone
have wires
else.
inside of me.
You don't. It's just an
I
expression.
have muscles, and I have capillaries,
That's
and
right.
I have nerve endings, and I have blood, and I have
Yep.
bone.
And they
Ow.
all work perfectly.
Okay, Max, let's boogie. We're late
Why isn't Mom taking me to school?
because she has to run an errand with Hattie.
These are the wrong shoes.
Max, we don't have time,
I wanna
okay?
wear
Just
my
put those
blue
on.
shoes.
Put those on.
No, I need to put my blue shoes
Max,
on.
these are
no,
fine. I want you to put these on.
No, I
Max,
need to put my
the
blue
black
shoes on.
You don't need the
I
blue
need
shoes.
to
You can
put
wear.
my blue shoes
All right,
on.
fine. We'll find the blue shoes. You want to help me?
No.
Okay, first of all, is Mac acting or does he really have Asperger's? Dr. Safdar, medical director for Seclair, is with me, and Rick. And first of all, it's a form of autism. Is it just that simple to define, or is it because it's so nebulous nobody really knows exactly what it is?
It is. Asperger was, the term was coined in about 1940s, and it's a high-functioning form of autism. But it's really, I think, a gifted form of being. So there are some difficulties, but it's a matter of how do you manage those difficulties in an effective manner. But people can appear as well together, but they may have some challenges that have to be identified and dealt with.
Yeah, and did the father make a mistake by saying that it was a disability?
Well, I call it an ability. I mean, if somebody is short on something, they have something more giftedness. So folks with Asperger's syndrome maybe they're very smart in, say, mathematics or computer sciences and other sciences, because once they focus on something, they tune out the rest. And that's where the problem begins to appear to the people who, quote, are normal.
Now, the psychologist later in that segment of Parenthood said to the parents, to the mom who was crying, she said, well, should I not have cried? And he said, well, that kind of indicates that Asperger's is something to mourn.
Yeah. If things don't happen according to the way we like them, we as the parents or families or community begin to see it as if this is not right. Mm-hmm. Where the purpose of this conversation is really, Jonas, to kind of begin to recognize that these things happen to people like you and I. I mean, you and I may have children or friends or family who may have this condition. And it's a matter of how do we know what's happening and how do we effectively manage that. In this particular clip, the parents are on the run, and it's very hard to work in a rushed manner with somebody who needs to understand what's going on. So the kid is saying, I need some time to understand what's happening. Mm-hmm. But making the comment that somebody has that it's just perfectly okay.
Yeah, Rick, at one point the father said, you're wired differently, and you saw what Max said, wait a minute. And he specifically went down the list. I mean, he could have been a physician for that matter. Mm-hmm. But what do you do in terms of treatment for this particular disorder?
Okay. Well, and I think as Dr. Chaudhry had mentioned, we really don't see it as a disorder or a deficit. First off, I think really helping families understand the strengths and the talents that their child has as a result of Asperger's, where these children are very loving, very compassionate, they're very brilliant. They love to, as you saw in the clip, they love to put all the pieces together. So they'll make fantastic mechanics or scientists or physicists. So first off, I think it's helping everyone understand the inherent strengths that children have with Asperger's. I think another piece to Asperger's is the sensory nature of Asperger's, where these wonderful kids and young adults, at times their emotional life can get a little complicated because they may feel happy, happier, very happy, sad, mad, scared, confused, and their emotional life gets overwhelming and they perseverate. So there is a real sensory nature to treating them and to their experience. The beautiful piece is that they can, with assistance, learn to identify their emotions. Also, we find great success with the use of dialectical behavioral therapy. We find great success in teaching these children mindfulness skills, relaxation skills, concrete skills that help them do their homework, because they're also very ritualistic in nature, and there's a strength to that. However, if the ritual doesn't go just like this, and if it veers a little bit this way, they get very anxious and very agitated. And so we actually teach mindfulness practices that help them slow their mind down, and then they can move on with their tasks.
Forgive me, I should not have called it a disorder. I'm like the dad. That's syndrome.
A syndrome.
But now, what about if you're a public school teacher and you have someone with Asperger's in your class? I mean, is there enough known about this to give people who have to deal with them on a daily basis ammunition to make things okay?
It is really training the folks who are involved in this whole conversation, and teachers and school aides and the school administration, in addition to the parents and families, really need to learn that these are syndromes of gifted children, and then with the proper, simple methodologies, they can be helped greatly, rather than both parties getting very frustrated.
Mm-hmm. Rick, what's the difference between treating a child with Asperger's and treating an adult? Because it stays with you, it doesn't like disappear all of a sudden.
Well, I think that's a really good point. First off, I think there are similarities. It's really based on the person and what their needs are. So that children, and as I say, big kids, meaning us adults, can have struggles with our anger, managing frustration. You'll also find with some children and adults in the spectrum or with Asperger's, they have high anxiety, and so therefore they don't always learn social skills that are useful. So it really depends on the person. Sometimes doing social skills work and skills to manage mood dysregulation with a child is important. Sometimes doing that with an adult is equally as important. So it's really based on the individual. But the other piece that I want to say that again ties into their strengths is that children, teens, and adults with Asperger's, I also think the part of the problem has been is that we've always felt that they needed to adapt or adjust to the world. But I really feel firmly that the world needs to adapt to them because of the beauty, the talents, and the strengths that they have as a person.
What do you see as the reason, I'm sure this is an open-ended question, for such an increase in autism? I mean, the rates are just going up steadily.
Yeah. Well, there has been about 10-fold increase in the past decade. I have my theory about that, but we'll just kind of remain scientific in this point. Even better recognition, better understanding, better diagnosis does not fully, quantify the numbers of increase. So some of the thoughts are increasing urbanization, increasing stressful life of living, increasing exposure to chemicals that are all around us. One wonders which one is doing that. There's a lot of debate about the vaccination, but the point is that has been proven not to be the case. But I believe that the way we are living these days may have something to contribute to the increasing incidence.
Yeah, and a certain age group, it's a certain younger age group that it's really increasing by leaps and bounds.
It is, and there's no sign of plateauing at this time.
Yeah.
We are living in a chemical soup. So all the chemicals we are producing in the world, they go somewhere. They end up in the ocean. The fish would eat it up, and then we eat the same fish. So we really have to kind of look at our patterns of living and style of being so that we can live more organically.
Well, we have information on how to get in touch with Dr. Chaudhry and Ricardo if you'd like to reach him also at Seclair. Phone number 724-468-3999. This is not the last time we're going to be discussing this, so I want to stay tuned and fill us in on what's going to happen in terms of discoveries or revelations.
It's always interesting.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Jonas.
That's Impact for this week. Thank you for watching. Take care.
is a